Program is the active center. Program is the active center.
Today, we are taking a look at the machinery of democracy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the shiny parts, the campaign ads, the rallies, the speeches.
No.
I mean the actual plumbing, the invisible gears that turn when you step into a voting booth.
Yeah.
We are talking about the SAVE Act.
That's the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And honestly, whether you're a political junkie or, someone who just tunes in every 4 years, this is a piece of legislation. It's H.R. 8281 that really forces us to ask a pretty uncomfortable question, which is, how secure is the ballot box, really?
Exactly. I think most of us kind of operate on autopilot. You register, you get a card in the mail, you show up, you vote. It feels solid.
Right, feels permanent.
But the sources we're unpacking today suggest that the system is actually a lot more fragile than it looks. It's moving from what they call an attestation-based system
to a verification-based system.
That's the one.
And that's the core tension right there. I mean, it sounds technical, but it's actually pretty philosophical.
How so?
Well, how do we balance access, making sure every eligible person can vote without a huge headache, with security, with making sure only eligible people are voting?
And before we get into all the databases and the legal jargon, the source material really grounds this in a way that, I don't know, it hit me pretty hard. It starts with a story.
It does. It starts with the human element.
So picture this. This is an anecdote shared by proponents of the act. You have a citizen's mother. She's done everything right her whole life. She's registered. Election day comes around. She goes to her polling place. She's ready to do her civic duty.
As you do.
She walks up to the table, gives her name, gives her address, and the poll worker looks at the list, frowns a little, and then gives her the worst possible news.
You've already voted.
Can you just imagine that feeling? The confusion? I mean, she's standing right there.
She clearly hasn't voted.
But the book says she has.
And that is just a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
Because in the eyes of the system, her identity has already been used.
Right.
Someone else walked in, claimed to be her, and cast a ballot in her name.
This source does mention that the poll worker let her fill out a provisional ballot. So, technically she still voted. But reading that, it felt, I don't know, like a consolation prize.
It feels hollow because effectively it is. So the source makes a really sharp point here. Yes, she filled out a provisional ballot, but the fraudulent vote, the one cast by the criminal who stole her identity, is already in the box. And once a ballot is in the box, it's anonymous. You can't go fish it back out.
So her actual lawful vote was effectively nullified before she even parked her car.
Exactly. Her voice was stolen. And the expert analysis in our notes argues that this wasn't a failure of the mother.
No.
It was a failure of verification. The argument is that if the poll worker had required, rigorous proof of identity, that criminal actor couldn't have just walked in and taken her vote.
And that nightmare scenario is basically the why behind the SAVE Act.
It is.
It aims to institutionalize protections so that specific type of theft becomes, impossible.
Correct. It's all about closing the gap between claiming to be someone and proving you are that person.
Which brings us to the first big section of our breakdown. This shift from the honor system to verification.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that we're currently in an attestation model. And I feel like a lot of people listening might be thinking, wait, don't we already verify citizenship?
You would think so, right? But the answer for the most part is no. And this is the big aha moment in the source material. We have to look back to the National Voter Registration Act of 1993.
The motor voter law.
That's the one. The goal back then was to make registration as easy as possible to boost participation.
Right. You're at the DMV, you check a box.
Exactly. But the mechanics of it are built on trust. When you register to vote using that standard federal form, there is a box that asks, are you a U.S. citizen? You check, yes.
And then you sign your name at the bottom.
And that signature is under penalty of perjury. So it's not a casual thing.
Legally, no.
Legally, the weight is heavy. If you lie, you're committing a crime. But mechanically, it's just ink on paper. That is attestation. You are attesting on your honor that you're a citizen.
And in most cases, the clerk just accepts that checkmark as the truth. They don't say, okay, prove it.
Exactly. The system assumes you aren't lying. It assumes the threat of perjury is enough to keep non-citizens away.
And the proponents of the SAVE Act argue that in a world of high-stakes elections, relying on an honor system is a massive security flaw.
It just leaves the door open for non-citizens to get on the rolls.
Right.
And the source points out this isn't always some, grand conspiracy. Sometimes it's malicious, sure, but a lot of times it's just accidental.
How so?
Someone who doesn't speak English well might misunderstand the form, check the box, and boom, they're legally registered.
That's a really important distinction. It's not just about stopping spies. It's about stopping bureaucratic errors. So, enter the SAVE Act. How does it change that interaction at the counter?
The change is drastic. It introduces a requirement for something called DPOC.
DPOC. Sounds like a medical term.
It stands for Documentary Proof of Citizenship. Under this act, checking the box is dead.
Go on.
You cannot just say you are a citizen. You have to prove it with physical documentation.
Okay, so we're talking about actually bringing papers.
Real papers. The source lists the specific acceptable documents: a U.S. passport, a certified birth certificate, or a naturalization certificate.
That is a significant friction point. I mean, I don't carry my birth certificate around in my wallet.
No, of course not.
Most people keep that stuff in a safe or some dusty file cabinet.
It creates a hurdle, absolutely. And the legislation is intentional about that. The logic is to create a physical paper trail.
Okay.
The idea is that if you require the hard document, you physically prevent a non-citizen from entering the system. It moves the filter to the very front of the process.
So you can't even get on the list without the proof.
You can't. It's hardening the front door. It's like the difference between a self-checkout lane where you just scan and go
versus a lane where a guard checks your receipt against your cart before you leave the store.
That is a great analogy. Right now, we are operating on the self-checkout honor system. The SAVE Act wants to put that guard at the door.
But here is where my brain goes next. Okay, hardening the front door helps with new voters.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the hundreds of millions of people already on the voter rolls? Does the SAVE Act do anything about the people already inside the house?
That is a great question, and it brings us to the second major pillar of the Act, voter roll maintenance. It's not just about the front door, it's about cleaning up the back end.
Because lists get messy. People move, people die, people change their names.
Or, and this is what the Act really focuses on, their legal status changes.
Ah.
The Act mandates that states must remove non-citizens from existing rolls. But to do that, you can't just guess. You need information.
So how do they know? If I'm on the list, how does the state know if I'm a citizen or not if I registered, say, 10 years ago?
The Act mandates a technological approach. It requires states to access and use federal databases.
Which ones?
Specifically, it forces a connection with the Social Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security, DHS.
Ah, so they are breaking down the government silos.
Exactly. I mean, think about the current disconnect. You might have someone who comes to the U.S. on a temporary work visa. They're here illegally. They get a driver's license.
Right.
In some states, that interaction with the DMV might accidentally trigger a voter registration if the systems aren't talking to each other correctly.
Okay, I see. And then 5 years later, maybe their visa expires?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they are still here, but they never became a citizen. But their name is still on the voter list because nobody ever checked.
And currently, the state might never know. But if the SAVE Act passes, the state is required to ping the DHS database.
And that database would have their status.
It would have real-time verification. Oh, this person on our voter roll is actually listed as a foreign national in the DHS system.
And that mismatch acts like a flare.
It's a huge red flare. It triggers the removal process. It allows the state to scrub the list based on hard data rather than guesswork.
It sounds like a massive data integration project.
It is. But the argument is that without that connection, the states are basically flying blind.
There's another layer to this hardening of the system that the notes mention, which is standardization.
Mm-hmm.
You know how every time we watch election returns, we are reminded that the U.S. isn't really one election?
Oh, yeah.
It's 50 separate elections all happening at once.
We are waiting on this county, but their rules say they can't count until midnight. It's a total patchwork.
A massive patchwork. And the source points out that election laws vary wildly state by state. Some are very strict, others are very loose.
And that variability is viewed as a security risk. The SAVE Act tries to establish a federal standard for this proof of citizenship.
So it wouldn't matter if you're in Florida or Oregon or Maine. The proof required to vote in a federal election would be the same everywhere.
Right. And the argument there is that it prevents forum shopping or finding weak links.
Mm-hmm.
If one state has very loose registration systems, it theoretically opens a door that shouldn't be open.
Mm.
By setting a federal floor for verification, the act tries to seal those cracks across the board.
Now, mandates are nice, but usually laws need some muscle behind them.
They need teeth.
Right. We've seen plenty of rules that just get ignored because there's no punishment. Does the SAVE Act actually punish anyone for not doing this?
Oh, it has teeth, for sure. The source material is very clear on this. Section 3 of our breakdown is all about enforcement and accountability. The act is not asking nicely.
So what kind of penalties are we talking about?
Well, first, it introduces criminal penalties for election officials who knowingly register non-citizens.
Wow. So if a county clerk just looks the other way, they are on the hook personally.
Yes. It raises the personal stakes for the people running the administration. If you knowingly facilitate non-citizen voting, you could face federal charges.
Oh, okay.
But there is another mechanism that I found even more fascinating. It empowers you.
Me. Like me sitting here.
You, as a private citizen, the act allows for something called a private right of action.
I've heard that term. Break it down for us.
It essentially crowdsources the enforcement.
Interesting.
The act allows private citizens who feel they've been harmed by a violation to bring civil lawsuits to ensure compliance.
So if I think my local election board isn't cleaning the rolls, if I think they're ignoring the DHS database check, I can sue them.
Essentially, yes. It empowers individuals to act as watchdogs.
Huh.
If the government is sluggish or if the Department of Justice is looking the other way for whatever reason, a regular citizen can drag the election officials into court and force them to follow the law.
That changes the dynamic completely. It makes everyone a potential auditor of the system.
It does. It decentralizes enforcement.
Yeah.
It means the law doesn't just depend on whoever is the attorney general at the moment. It depends on the citizens themselves.
That is a powerful shift. Okay, so we've talked about the how, the passports, the databases, the lawsuits, but we really need to dig into the why.
Right.
We touched on the stolen vote earlier, but the source material goes deeper into the philosophy of the vote.
It does. It brings up a concept called vote dilution.
Sounds like a chemistry term.
It's a constitutional argument, and it is central to the logic of the SAVE Act. The idea is all about the weight of a vote.
Okay, let's unpack that. My vote counts as one. Your vote counts as one.
Correct. But the argument is that the right to vote isn't just about access being allowed to cast the ballot. It's also about protection ensuring your legal vote isn't canceled out or diminished.
I see. So if I vote legally and someone else votes illegally.
And mathematically, your vote matters less. Think of the total vote as a pie. If there are 100 legal voters, your vote is 1% of the pie. If you allow 10 illegal voters to cast ballots, now the pie gets cut into more slices. Your slice, your 1%, shrinks. It has been diluted.
That's a really clear way to put it. It frames the illegal vote not just as a procedural crime, but as a direct harm to the legal voter. It devalues my currency.
Precisely. And that connects back to the chain of custody concept the sources discuss.
Okay.
This helps explain why the Act pairs the registration requirements, showing your birth certificate when you sign up, with photo ID requirements on Election Day.
Right, because proving you were a citizen 3 months ago when you registered doesn't matter if someone else shows up claiming to be you on Election Day.
Like the mother in our opening story.
Exactly.
It's a two-step verification. Step 1, prove you are a citizen to get on the list. Step 2, prove you are the person on the list to get the ballot. The source calls this securing the chain of custody.
It ensures that the person in the booth is the same person on that verified citizenship proven roll.
That's the goal.
It seems like the ultimate goal here is just to stop the arguments after the election.
You hit the nail on the head. Section 5 of our breakdown is all about confidence.
Because lately, it feels like every election ends with a lawsuit or a conspiracy theory or just general doubt.
So much doubt.
It feels like we spend months arguing about whether the count was even real.
And that doubt is toxic to a democracy. I mean, if people don't believe the count, the government loses legitimacy. The source argues that this whole shift to verification is designed to eliminate that post-election audit phase where everyone questions the results.
The logic being, if we all agree the list is clean before we vote, then we have to accept the result after we vote.
Exactly. Verification versus suspicion. If every single name is verified up front via birth certificate or passport, the margin for error just shrinks. Transparency goes way up.
Yeah.
If the public really knows, that every participant met the same rigorous standard, the result is much harder to challenge.
It kind of removes the black box element.
Right. But We have to acknowledge the flip side. The source briefly mentions the counterargument, and we need to represent that to understand the whole picture.
Which is that some people say this is just too much paperwork.
Yes, and that is the classic friction point. Critics argue that requiring documentary proof of citizenship creates hurdles for people who might be eligible but don't have easy access to those documents.
I'm thinking of maybe an elderly person in a rural area who was born at home in the 1940s. Maybe they never got a passport.
Right.
Tracking down a certified birth certificate might be a nightmare for them.
Exactly. It takes time, it takes money, it takes transportation. It is a barrier to entry.
So it's a trade-off.
It is the ultimate trade-off. Convenience versus security. The proponents of the SAVE Act acknowledge this friction, but their rebuttal, according to the source, is that the cost of verification is a necessary investment.
They're saying the juice is worth the squeeze.
They are. They view the sanctity of the ballot and the exclusive right of citizens to vote as paramount. And in their view, a little extra friction up front is worth it to ensure the integrity of the entire system. They argue that if you lower the bar to make it convenient, you inevitably lower the security.
And the SAVE Act clearly plants its flag on the side of security. It's a security-first model of election administration.
It really is a complete overhaul of the mindset we've used for, the last 30 years?
Yeah.
From we trust you
To show us the proof.
That's it.
And connecting all those dots, from the mother losing her vote to the database checks to the final tally, it's all about trying to build a system that is mathematically and procedurally tight.
It's about treating the vote as a precious asset that needs guarding.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've looked at the mechanics, the penalties, and the philosophy. It leaves us with a lot to think about regarding what we value in our democracy.
It does, and I think it challenges us to look at voting not just as a right, but as a process that requires maintenance.
Yeah, like a bridge or a power grid.
Exactly. You can't just leave it alone and hope it works forever.
Before we go, we want to leave you with one final thought. Something that wasn't explicitly in the text, but sort of hovers over this whole conversation.
We live in a world where we accept rigorous ID verification for almost everything.
Right. I was thinking about this the other day. Try getting on an airplane without showing ID.
You can't do it.
Try opening a bank account. Try walking into a federal office building.
Try buying Sudafed at the pharmacy. You have to prove who you are.
So the question to mull over is this. Does the act of voting, which determines the future of the country, the laws we live by, the taxes we pay, does that act require less security than boarding a flight to Cleveland?
Or does it actually deserve more security precisely because it is the fundamental mechanism of our government?
That's the question. Is voting a low-security convenience or a high-security duty? The SAVE Act has its answer, but it's something worth asking yourself next time you head to the polls. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.